Hey, welcome everybody. Jeremy Edward Jones here. My first ever podcast, first of I hope many, although I will say this show won't be very good. Obviously we'll be introducing me, talking about what I hope this ends up being, hopefully get some feedback from you, make some changes, fix what I did wrong, and make some improvements over time. I've had some people wanted me to do this for a while, so first of all I want to thank them for continuing to push me, but make no mistake, I've wanted to do this for a while. I've been stuck with lack of technology, the ability to do it. I've been researching for a while and trying to find what I need, and I think I finally got everything. In fact, look how fancy I am right now turning the music down as I'm talking. So, alright, that'll be enough for that for now. So, who am I? What am I doing here? For all you Admiral Stockdale fans out there. Anyway, as I said, Jeremy Edward Jones. In fact, let's start with that. A lot of people out there know me from Facebook, but also know me from long before Facebook and know me as Jeremy Jones. But you'll see that the name on my Facebook tag is Edward Jones, and it's crazy some of the rumors that are out there. He's trying to hide, and he got in trouble, or all kinds of different stories as to why Edward Jones is the name I have on Facebook. Look, it's very simple. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. There are people out there who don't like me. There are people out there who think that I protected the person who victimized their family. There are family members out there who think that I didn't do a good enough job, and because of me, little Johnny's in the jail. No, it's not my fault. But anyway, it's not a secret of who I am, but I am using my middle name on Facebook, Edward Jones, just to make it one step harder for some people to find me. And really, that also came about a different way. I was kind of forced to do it. When I was in private practice, I was very active on Facebook, and the public defender's office came to me and offered me a job, which I was very excited for. And the boss at that time said, well, you're not going to be able to keep up with your Facebook talk. And I said, well, then I'm not taking the job, because I really like being on Facebook. So the compromise that we got was that I would use my middle name. At that point in time, the issue was jurors. Would I alienate jurors, and would the alienation be a detriment to my client? If I've made a juror mad from my political views or something that I've done, would they hold that against my clients? Whatever the reason, the bottom line has nothing to do with me getting in trouble, hiding from somebody, or sneaking around or anything like that. I've heard all kinds of silly and crazy rumors, but if you want to check it, it's very easy to see. You can see when I changed my name. I changed my name around February of 2020, and that is the time that I accepted the job at the public defender's office. So that really was the reason that I changed it. So that's a little bit about me to start out with, so we'll get to that. Let me tell you what this podcast is going to be about. It's going to be about me, because there's no other better topic. No, I'm just joking. Although, I am going to share stories. I get asked all the time when I'm out and about, what's your favorite case? What's the craziest thing you've seen? What's the weirdest thing? And, the lawyers have seen a lot. Trial lawyers have seen more, and frankly, criminal defense lawyers, I think, have seen the most. I was in private practice before I went to the public defender's office, and yeah, we do see some crazy stuff in civil court. There's some crazy arguments going on in divorce court. But in criminal defense, you get some crazy stories. Look, and I understand it. The person that's accused, they're fighting for their lives, and some people will say or do anything, and I can't say that I blame them to a certain degree. So we hear some crazy stories, we see some crazy things, and we hear it from both sides. So anyway, back to the podcast. That's what I'm going to do: share some war stories, share things that are going on, talk about cases that are in the news. People ask me my opinion on that a lot, so I will talk about things that are in the news. One thing, and everybody should know this just by listening or seeing any attorney on TV or on Facebook or any social media, I'm not giving legal advice. Anything I say here about a case is strictly just my opinion of what I'm seeing from the case from the outside. I rarely will know more than what you know that from watching news reports. If it's a case in Georgia, I somewhat might have a little bit more access. Not access in the sense that it's secret, but I know how to look up things on clerk web pages. So I might see some filings that the news isn't reporting on. So in those regards, I might know a little bit more about the case, and I'll give my opinions on those. But everything that I talk about when I talk about cases that are in the news will be information that's public information. If by chance it's a rare case that I have inside information from a defense lawyer, from a police officer, or something like that, I'll say as much, but I'm not going to divulge anything that would jeopardize the case or, more importantly, violate my oath that I have as an attorney in Georgia. So, but it's not legal advice. So if I talk about a case that sounds a lot like what you're going through, and I say, this guy right now, he should do this, that's not what you should do. It might be, but until somebody knows all the facts, not only of your case, but of your situation, of what's going on in your life and your situation, nobody can give you legal advice, certainly not some dolt like me on the internet. So when I talk about cases in the abstract, hypothetical, or real life, if it matches something that's going on in your life, under no circumstance should you take that as legal advice. As to my cases, or cases that are going on in our judicial circuit, which is in Georgia, the Lookout Mountain Judicial Circuit, Catoosa, Walker, Dade, Chattooga counties, I will not be talking about those. If I talk about a local case, that case will have been over with. The time for appeal would be over with. And if there's any pending appeal, I will not be talking about it. There might be some very, very rare exceptions, but it'd be talking about things like they have a hearing next week. The trial starts 2 weeks from now. I'm not going to talk about cases that are inside our circuit, even if it's not my case or my office's case. As a public defender, we are somewhat always on call to take a case. If a private attorney needs more money and the person can't afford it, if the court grants, which is rare, but they can, if the court grants the current defense attorney the ability to withdraw for non-payment, then our office is going to get the case, and any comments I made, even when it wasn't my case, would be inappropriate. So if it's in the Lookout Mountain Judicial Circuit, just know I'm not going to talk about it. And that includes cases that could be pending. Somebody gets arrested tomorrow, even though it's not a case yet, per se. I'm not going to talk about it unless I am 100% sure it won't be in our office. I will talk about my past cases, and I will talk about things that have happened in court. Every time I talk about one of my cases, every name that I say is going to be made up. I'm going to change some of the facts to make it harder, if not impossible, for somebody to go and look it up. I might talk about how the person drove a red car and then ran a red light, when in reality it was the person was speeding on a motorcycle and caused a wreck. The legal issues that I'm presenting will remain the same, but I will always change facts and names, and again, not in a way to mislead, but in a way to protect the privacy of everybody involved. But even those are going to be rare, and they are going to be old cases. So it's not going to be a current case that's working on. So if you see me in trial doing a murder case in trial, and then the next day I'm on here talking about a murder case of mine, you can rest assured, even if the set facts sound familiar, it's not the case that I'm working on right now. So that's what we're going to talk about when we talk about legal issues here. I hope to get information, get questions from you. Ask your legal questions. I'll be happy to answer as far as the legal issues that are being presented, what facts and factors could be important, what to expect if you went to court or hired a lawyer. But as I said earlier, I'm not giving legal advice. If you ask me about DUI issues because you're facing a DUI, again, I'll talk about the importance of doing your ALS hearing and protecting your rights here and there. But I'm not going to be giving legal advice, ever. Nothing I say here should ever be construed as legal advice. But also when we talk about local news, politics, state of Georgia politics, I'll get into some, and some national politics, but I don't talk about national politics as much as I might like to, and the reason for that's simple. There's plenty of outlets for that. You can go to any dozens of podcasts to hear the takes of the national news. The only time I'm going to get into national news is if it somehow touches local news, if somehow or another it might affect us, or if I see a story going out there and it's been beat to death, but people aren't making a point that I think is important, then I might talk about it then, because that means that for some reason or another, my brain has somehow found a unique take to it that other people have not found. So national news will not be as frequent as local and state news. So we'll be talking about that and then just random stuff. It's my show. I'll talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. So that's a little bit about what the show is going to be. What I did about a week or two ago, I asked people, what's your question you might have for a public defender, and I thought that might be a good thing to start out with in our first show. So I'm going to kind of go over those. So let's go over a couple of those questions. Some of them are asked a lot. I'd like to thank everybody who joined in, and let's see if one of these questions. So somebody asked. They say that public defenders aren't good lawyers, so that's why they ended up at the public defender's office. So, yeah, I've heard that a lot. Now, one kernel of truth in that is public defender office is not an uncommon place for a new lawyer who just passed the bar to start. And like any profession, when you just start out, you're just starting out. But here's one thing about working in the public defender's office. And I can speak with some authority to this because before I went to the public defender's office, I had a private practice. And so I've done both sides, and I've had friends who are in private practice. I have friends who are in firms. So I kind of know about it. But anyway, as a public defender, I do more criminal cases in a month than I did in a year in private practice. Spread that over 6 months to a year. I've done more criminal cases than some lawyers, even lawyers who do criminal defense, maybe not full-time criminal defense, but have criminal defense as part of their practice that they might do in their career. I was talking to my boss a while back, and I said, "Yeah, well, we're working on this case. The case that I have, a co-defendant has a private attorney, and that private attorney is well-known and very experienced." I said, he's saying this, but I don't know if that's right or not, and I kind of want to take this angle, but he has so much experience, and my boss pointed out, Jeremy, you've done more trials than he has in his entire career, and he's been a lawyer for a very long time. So as public defenders, we have a lot more experience, and experience doesn't make you great. It certainly doesn't make you bad either. But no, public defenders are not public defenders because we can't get a job elsewhere. I can get a job probably just about any firm I want to get a job at, especially if they had criminal defense work. As far as lawyers who just start out, and that's where they start, we actually have that in our office right now. Look, it's like any other job. They start out, with, I don't want to call it training wheels because that makes it sound like they're not prepared, but we start out with the smaller cases first, the possession cases and whatnot, and as the person, and it's how I was treated too, and as the person is more comfortable in court and can identify issues faster, they get the bigger cases, but they're never left alone. When I first started, I had senior lawyers checking in on me, reviewing my work. More importantly, their doors are open. I can ask questions anytime I wanted. So you are absolutely not getting a lesser lawyer when you have a public defender. I try not to say that I'm better than other people. We all know I am in some regards, but many aspects, when you have a public defender, especially one who's been a public defender for more than a year or two, you're absolutely getting probably one of the most experienced criminal defense lawyers in the area that you can possibly get. And again, I'm not saying that experience means greatness. There's you have to know what you're doing, and that comes with study, not just experience. But they're not going to be surprised, and they have a lot more resources available to them. So, no, I don't think that it's a lesser attorney, but I do concede that some attorneys, it's not uncommon for attorneys who want to do criminal defense work, when they pass the bar for the first time, that's where they start. So, great question. Next question. Um, is there pressure from the DA or judge to prevent long trials that would potentially cost the state a lot of money? First of all, I don't think long trials cost the state a lot of money. It does cost money, but a trial is a trial is a trial. If the state, the district attorney wants to have their expert to say that this kind of bruising means that, or this gun couldn't have fired because of that, they're going to have that expert there regardless of how long the trial is. But most of the experts that the state calls are experts that are already on the state payroll. For instance, the number one expert that comes in for a state is the crime lab person who says, I tested this substance, it was methamphetamine. A person's on salary for the state, so they're getting paid whether they're sitting in the lab or they're sitting in the Catoosa County courtroom. So that doesn't cost any extra. There's some amount of cost for travel, of course, and we won't get into the whole opportunity cost while they're testifying. They can't be testing substances, so sometimes things get subcontracted out. I mean, all that's true, but a longer trial doesn't necessarily cost more money. Everybody is getting paid whether they're doing the trial or they're working in their office. Obviously, there's two exceptions. Jurors. The jurors are getting paid a certain amount each day, and if you've ever been a juror, you know that's not a lot. But do remember it's multiplied by 12 to 14, depending on how many alternates they have. A courtroom during a trial has more bailiffs. I'm not talking about police officers, but bailiffs than if there was no court going on. So I guess that's an added expense. And then there are officers who work courthouse services, but they would be doing something else if they weren't a trial going on. So I don't think that's an added expense. I could ask the sheriff, I guess, if during trial terms, while trials are going on, if other officers are brought in at overtime rates, that might cost extra. I don't want to say there's pressure to get a trial done fast, but certainly not. There's no pressure on a public defender any more than there is on the DA. Judges will ask, how long is this trial going to be? And I'll say, well, it's going to be about, in my opinion, about 3 days. Well, I got a dinner party I'm going to in 2 days. Can you get it done before then? And that's not a joke. That really happened in a trial I did. But that doesn't, but that judge would have said that to me, to the prosecuting attorney, either way. So I wouldn't call it pressure, but they do want to get a firm thing, and they don't want to waste time. And that's always going to be the case. I have heard judges after a trial complain about an attorney, whether it be the prosecutor, if it was a trial that I was on, or just another attorney from, if it wasn't a trial that I did, and then, I can't believe that attorney went into all that detail. It didn't even mean anything. Look, every attorney, they have their strategy. They believe that what they're saying is important and it needs to be said, so they say it. But judges can get frustrated if they think that an attorney is dragging his or her feet or being repetitive or wasting the court's time. So in that regards, I guess there might be some type of pressure, but I don't think that pressure is directed just because the person's the public defender. Does the state have a larger budget to prosecute than the public defender gets to defend? So, yes and no. Historically in Georgia, prosecutors got paid more than public defenders. A law was recently passed to equalize that. So a lot of public defenders are going to be getting pay raises. I don't mind it. But I will say this. There is some valid argument as to why assistant district attorney might get paid more than an assistant public defender. And one of the things is, so I have a lot of cases, but I have fewer cases than my contemporary would at the DA's office, because not every case that comes into the court system is represented by the public defender. There are some people who hire private attorneys. So the DA's office is going to have those cases where our office will not. Furthermore, there are cases, Not enough, in my opinion, but there are some cases that end up being dismissed, and the DA's office still had to work those to begin with. I never see those cases that get dismissed. Then there are cases that the DA's office works, realizes, well, there is a crime here, we believe there's a crime here, but it's not a felony, so they send it down to state court where the solicitor handles it. But again, the public defender's office in that case might see it at some point in time, but doesn't really work it. So the DA's office is going to work more cases. The counter argument to that is the DA's office has a lot more support staff than the public defender's office. In the public defender's office, we have one admin in each office, and then one admin who's over all of them. So where she sits, that office has two admins. We have a social worker, and I think that's it. And then, of course, an investigator. That's all we have. Whereas in the Catoosa County office, they have three people who just help the DAs get all their stuff organized. I organize my own files. I get everything together on myself. They have somebody who does all that for them. So in that regards, the DA's office does have more money, more resources. But I don't know. They probably do have more money. They probably do have more resources than the public defender's office, but I don't see that completely as an unfair thing, because I do think the DA's office has more work to do for every case that they, well, not every case, for a lot of cases that they have. They also have to deal with victims. You have an assault, you have a rape or something like that. The victims will be calling. Some victims are a lot more needy than other victims, and rightfully so in many cases. So they have to deal with that. So there probably is more work in the prosecutor's office, not to mention the biggest thing of them all. The burden is on the state to prove the case. They have to make sure all the witnesses are there. They have to ask the questions. They have to establish every element of the case. In theory, this is not how I do a case, but in theory, I can just walk in there, sit down, and read the newspaper the entire trial, and at the end of it say, well, yeah, they didn't prove their case, jury, here's why, and then be done with it, or say, hey, jury, they proved the case, my guy's guilty. And again, I wouldn't do either one of those. But the state doesn't have that luxury. They have to prepare for weeks and weeks, and they're not prepare for weeks, but there is an argument to be made that their preparation does take longer, because they can't miss something. If they miss one element of the crime, if they miss one element of proof that has to be shown, and I catch that, then I win, which is my job, which is why we have public defense attorneys. So that was another question. How are public defenders paid? I always thought they received a salary from the county. I'm sure every state does a different scheme. In Georgia, there are public defenders who are paid by the city, by the county, and some that are paid by the state. My salary comes from the state of Georgia. It has no bearing on how many cases that I do, how many pleas I get worked out, or how much my clients serve, or how many fines they pay. There's nothing to do with that, and it's certainly not tied to any type of outcome of cases. But the way that the formula is in the state of Georgia to provide public defenders, you have the chief public defender, which is the boss, the one that's appointed by the... I know our current one is appointed by the governor and then renewed by a particular board. That was because the previous chief resigned. What I don't know is it for a certain term, and then if the governor, I don't know, if the board, they hire, I don't know how, the governor appointed our current chief, and then there's a board that renews his contract every so often. After that, he hires assistant public defenders. The way that the formula is basically there's one public defender for each judge that there is in the circuit. So in our circuit, there are 4 judges, so there's 4 public defenders plus the chief public defender. So the state pays for 5 public defenders, one of them being the chief public defender, who works on budgets and staffing and everything else like that. So he doesn't do as many cases, though ours does plenty. But we have a lot more, and we have to have more attorneys than that. So in that regards, the county picks up the rest of them, and each county in our circuit contributes money to pay for more attorneys. I think 10 is what we have. when we're fully staffed. So so it's kind of a hybrid. The state and the counties pay. The county knows what the state public defenders get paid, and I think that they kind of match that salary. I don't think there's a salary difference between what the people who are funded by the county versus funded by the state. But I could be wrong about that. Um, Next question. Do you feel the public defender's caseloads are too big, possibly giving public defenders a bad reputation and making it seem as though they aren't doing the job well enough? Well, that question is, and one thing is asking what the public perception is, and I have an idea of that, but I'm not going to speak with any authority to that. Absolutely, my clients, if I get a complaint from clients, the complaint I get is I'm not working on their case. I don't see them. I ignore them. I'm not paying attention, and I know why they feel that way, and I don't blame them. As I tell anybody when they ask, the difference between a public defender and a paid lawyer is paid lawyer gets paid by the hour, so they'll come see you as much as you want them to because they're getting paid every time they show up. But that infers that I'm not going there because I'm not getting paid. And that's certainly not true. Our caseload is very large. I simply cannot go see my clients every single week. If I promised to see every client every week, then I would never be able to work on a case. So one thing I know my clients get frustrated on is in their mind, they don't see me near enough and I must not be working on their case. But anytime I'm talking to a client, that means nobody's case is getting worked on. The one promise I make to every one of my clients, and for the most part, it's very easy for me to keep, is when I get new information on the case, and by the way, I'm talking about people who are incarcerated. When they're not incarcerated, it's easier to talk to them. It's to pick up a phone call and be done with it. But for the ones that are incarcerated, if something develops on their case that's important, I will go see them within a couple of days of that information coming in. If they get an offer that would get them out of jail, if they accepted it, probation offer, obviously a dismissal, I will see them within 24 hours to let them know. One minor exception to that is if we don't have court for another 2 weeks, so it doesn't matter if I tell them about the offer today, tomorrow, or the next day, they're not getting out any sooner. If I'm too busy, I won't see them that same day, but maybe the next day or the day after. But with 48 hours is the absolute maximum. Because I need to know, because in some regards I have to prepare for things, and more importantly, I don't want them to say something on the phone to screw it up, because all phone calls are recorded. So that's a promise I make. If I have an offer that is a get-out-of-jail offer, my clients will know about that right away. And then any offer that I get, they will know about that within a week. So if it's a prison offer, 10 years, serve 5, my clients will know about that within a week of me receiving that or before the next court date, whichever comes first. So those are promises that I make about seeing my clients. But I understand the frustration that if they don't see me, they must think that I'm not working on the case, and that's simply not true. Some of the greatest compliments I have gotten are from the clients who absolutely hated me because they knew I wasn't doing anything in their case, in their mind. I had one just cuss me like a dog before the trial that I didn't do anything. I'm not prepared. We can't go to trial. It didn't matter how much I assured him that, no, man, I've been working your case for months now. And at the end of the trial, we got a not guilty verdict, and he was obviously very thankful. And I know you're saying, well, of course he was. You got not guilty. I had a similar situation where, unfortunately, it was a guilty verdict. Not only did my client compliment me about how well I did and how prepared I was, that same client complained to the judge that he didn't want me to be his lawyer because I wasn't prepared and I'd never talked to him, which, first of all, never is never true. I obviously talk to my clients. But at the end of that trial, even though he got years, I forget how many, it's 5 or 7, he thanked me and said that I was the only person who's ever worked that hard for him and fought for him. And number one, that had to be hard for him to say after he just been cussing me like a dog about how bad I was. And and there's a guilty verdict. So in his mind, there's justification about how bad I was, but he also knew he did it. But the point is, I am prepared for all my clients, and that's a promise I made myself before I started. I can live with guilty verdicts. People do commit crimes, and people do get punished for that. What I can't live with myself is if, because of me, they're in jail because I wasn't prepared. If we have a trial and the state got the evidence in that they should have got in, I kept out the evidence that shouldn't have come in, and there's a guilty verdict, then there's a guilty verdict. That's what happens when you commit crimes and the state can prove it, legally prove it. So anyway, I know in my mind that I've never been in court with a client for a dispositive hearing or trial or something like that I was not prepared for what was happening. As prepared as I can be because of them. Now, sometimes I'm not prepared because they didn't give me the right information or gave me the wrong information or refused to give me information. I had one in a trial that we had a particular defense about that we were going to use, and he kept telling me, yeah, that will work, those facts are correct. And then we get ready to do trial, and he says, well, no, I was just telling you that it's actually the opposite. It's trial. I relied upon what you said, and now I can't use that. And if what he said was true, that would have been good. I can't guarantee we would have won, but I couldn't use that. And while I always have a backup plan, and I executed my backup plan, anyway, so I'm as prepared as I can be. I don't know what that question means. If the defense needs an expert in a field to testify for them, how does that get decided as far as budget? I have heard expert witnesses can cost a lot of money, so I wonder if public defenders are given access to the needed funds to obtain the expert witness, or do they have to go through a nearly impossible bureaucratic maze and then jump through hoops just to get the funds? This one, I'm just going to speak from what I've heard. I haven't had the need to bring in an expert yet. Again, the defense doesn't have to prove anything. The burden is on the state to prove things. A lot of times, the state, when they have an expert, I disagree with her. I agree with their expert. There's not a lot to debate about. Now, there are cases we're going to debate about, did that bullet come from that gun? And I'll get those cases, I'm sure. And when I do, we'll have an expert. But what I have heard from people in my office who have had to get experts, that they've never been denied an expert from the county. That if it's over what our allotted budget is, they say we need the money for this expert. We've never been told no. That's what I've heard. I'm sure that it can happen, or maybe it has happened, but the example is so ridiculous it's not worth repeating. But we do have a budget for experts. People in my office have called experts, and they've been there and they've testified. So I know that we can get them. As far as jumping through hoops to get them, one of the reasons I went to the public defender's office instead of on my own is I want to just practice law. I don't want to do all that office stuff. So when I need an expert, I know that I just say, hey, I need an expert in this field, and I'm sure I have to go find the person, but I don't have to write the check. I don't have to negotiate payments, things like that. Yeah, I can't think of a time. I know that I haven't had an expert, but I have used the experts of the state that the state had against the state's own witnesses in their testimony. I did have a case. Now, unfortunately, the verdict was guilty, but I got the state's expert to agree with me that what she said was not completely correct. But that guy doesn't care because it was a guilty verdict. But my job is I read what the experts have, and if I have an expert who can say something different, then I'm going to get that expert. But science is science is science, and there's obviously a lot of things that are debated, and where those things are debated, then I will absolutely get an expert to contradict them. But the main expert that we encounter is the crime lab expert, and is this meth? Yes, it is. I mean, I'm not going to get my own expert to say it's not. Might get an expert to talk about false positives or contamination and cross-contamination if that's what the defense of the case is, but I haven't run into that yet. Those are all the questions that we had from the Facebook. We're already at probably double what I expect this podcast to be, and who knows, maybe it will end up being a 30-minute podcast instead of a 15 like I thought. The only other question I'm going to add is a question that I get asked at the dinner party, so to speak, and that is, how can you defend those people? And I have the same answer. It's a canned answer. I don't defend anybody. That's not my job. I defend the Constitution, and I defend everybody. I don't want to say I've never done it, because I'm sure it's come out of my mouth for a reason or other at a time or two, but it's certainly not my normal process. It's not what I open up with, and it's certainly not standard. And if I ever do ask it, it's ultra rare. But for lack of a better term, I'm going to say I never ask my clients, did you do it? I don't care. I really don't care if they did it or not. Number one, it's in the past. Whether they did it or not does not change anything, and nothing can get changed. All that matters to me is the evidence that's put in front of the jury, in front of the 12 people who have an open mind and who are to be neutral. That evidence is put in with accordance to our laws in the state of Georgia, and more importantly, to the Constitution protections that we have with the United States Constitution and the Georgia Constitution. My job is to make sure that only that evidence gets in. Obviously, to do research and investigate and find out if there's other things. Cross-examination is the greatest tool ever to find the truth. I love cross-examination, and I concentrate on that. That's what most of my time preparing for a case is. I'm going to make sure, and I'm going to put pressure on every theory that the state presents. But at the end of the day, my client did it or he or she didn't. That's almost always a binary exercise. The evidence comes in or it doesn't come in. That's a binary exercise. In my closing argument, I talk about what the rules are. I talk about how there's never a requirement for a guilty verdict to be returned, but you can return a not guilty verdict no matter what you think of the evidence. And I explain that to the jury. If I've done all of those things, then when I leave the courtroom that night, whether my client's going to jail for the next 50 years or is going home that night, I'm fine with it. And that might sound cold and callous, especially to family members of clients who have gotten long sentences, but all I can do is my job. And look, if I mess up, I'll be the first to admit I mess up, and there's an appeal process. And I will help, and I will work with the appellate attorney if I think I made a mistake or if I discover something that I should have done different or better. And if that person's entitled to a second trial, then I'll do all I can to get that person a second trial. I certainly have made mistakes, and I've helped appellate attorneys identify those and try to get new trials. But as so far every trial judge and every appeals court judge that one of my cases has been tested on has said, any mistake I've made has not been consequential to the case. So I don't defend those people. I defend the Constitution of the United States, obviously the greatest legal document ever written, and I love it. I absolutely love my job. I love defending the Constitution. I love fighting, because when I'm up there fighting for or defending the worst criminal ever, the child molester or whatever it is, I'm not just up there fighting for him or her. I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for our way of life, because if the state of Georgia knows that there's somebody like me who's going to demand every T crossed and I dotted when there's somebody who everybody knows did it and who needs to be buried under the jail, then they know for absolute certainty if there's a questionable case where the police went and targeted somebody because of what they believe, what they did politically, or for some other personal agenda, they know I'm going to be all over that case as well. So I treat every case the same, and I fight it tooth and nail. So I don't defend those people. I defend you, and I defend me, and I defend my family and your family. And that's how I see my job as a public defender. And I've never once felt the need to apologize for it. And I don't know if I talk so passionately about it that the people who ask me that question just want to get away from me before they catch my cooties. But nobody's ever said, well, I still think you're wrong. They always say, oh, I understand that. I couldn't do it, but I understand it. And then, look, I understand it. I mean, look, we have to pick juries for people who are accused of such crimes. And we have jurors who come up who, as the judge says, you haven't heard a bit of evidence. Well, he was accused. If he got accused of it, he must have done it. I always want to ask that same potential juror this question. Well, what if you got accused of it? What would you want? Would you want a fair and impartial juror out there? Then you should be a fair and impartial juror. But more importantly, I do want that juror to admit that they are biased and cannot be neutral, so that way they are not part of the jury pool. But anyway, I think that covers everything that I wanted to do. I have no idea how long this is going to be in the end. I've been recording now for just over 40 minutes. The next thing is to edit the episode, and that's something that I don't know how to do. I've been learning, and I think I know how, but we'll get into that. The plan is hopefully to drop a new episode, as they call it, on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. I know I'm supposed to be consistent, but anybody who knows me knows that come football season, if the Bengals are in Cincinnati, I'm in Cincinnati as well, so that might start delaying some of them. So I don't know. We'll figure that out as we go. We're going to have a lot of topics to talk about. I will set up a way that you can reach me, that you can ask questions. Again, ask me about legal questions that you have. I've given my disclaimer. I'll give it again when the time is appropriate. But I want to make this an engagement. I want to make it fun, and I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers, and I know you're going to make me upset, and hopefully I'll make you upset at some point in time. But this is my way of getting my voice out there, because I just, to be conceited, I think that I have a good voice in the sense that I do research everything. I research as much as I can. I jokingly say on Facebook a lot of times that I'm always right. And it's not that I'm right about every single subject. It's that I don't talk about a subject until I have done the research and I think I know everything that needs to be known about it. If people give me new information, I'm happy to change my mind if necessary. Not a lot of people could say that in this day and age of politics. So with that said, I look forward to engagements that we have, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We have an election season coming up, and there are pending cases out there that I've been talking about, so we'll be talking about those as they come up. And we know the craziness that comes on in these small town areas, and we're going to have a lot of fun. Anyway, thanks for watching, especially if you're still watching this, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, everybody.